You might recall earlier this week I spoke to Katherine Deves, a lawyer and the co-founder and spokeswoman for Save Women's Sport Australasia. This has come together as an international coalition of women's organisations, athletes and supporters of women in sport who are asserting that biological male athletes should not be competing in a female sport category. Now, this apparently is controversial. Katherine Deves on this program was arguing in defence of women's sex-based rights when sporting organisations, almost all of them, and I mean AFL, rugby, swimming, athletics, netball, life-saving, basketball, soccer and cricket, have adopted policies published 2 years ago by Sport Australia and the Human Rights Commission that displaced the category of biological sex in favour of gender identity. We've got the Olympics coming up and a big weekend of sport. I just wanted to very quickly check with Katherine Deves and ask her, given that, and this is the issue, if a person's trans or gender identity must remain confidential, and if anyone raises a concern, they're the ones excluded or penalised. So my simple question to Katherine, are boys and men across Australia this weekend playing female sport? The policy states that such a person is entitled to use the toilets, the change rooms, overnight accommodation, which aligns with their gender identity. Will there at the Olympics be biological men participating in women's sport? Katherine Deves is a mother and she's concerned about males entering spaces where young girls, teenagers and women may be in a state of undress. Does any of this breach the boundaries that ought to exist for girls and women by denying them dignity and privacy? Are there any legislative provisions that exclude males from the female sports category simply because there is a biological difference? I raised with Katherine the issue of injury because there's a mounting body of evidence that males enjoy, obviously, a significant biological advantage. I'd have thought women were at risk of injury if they're forced to play against male competitors. Excluding biological males who claim a trans or gender identity, and I've got nothing at all against any of that, but it doesn't mean they're excluded from sport. They can play in a biological category to which they belong or in mixed sex. By the way, the website is savewomensport.com. Katherine joins me very quickly. Katherine, thank you for your time. I just want to ask you, this weekend, a big weekend of sport, would there be biological men playing women's sport, and how would women know?
Alan, you are correct. There would be men and boys playing in women's sports. We are hearing stories from girls and women who are contacting us, also parents who are quite distressed. Girls are self-excluding, and the boys and men are either playing they're openly transgender, and we are aware of a number of them who are in the press, but there are also ones who are signing up, simply registering as female, and no one's allowed to talk about it. So it might be obvious to everyone.
If a person's trans or gender identity, must remain confidential, so if someone turns up to training and introduces themselves, how do you know whether they are a biological male?
Well, we would be able to tell from the usual cues. There are 6,000 biological differences between men and women, 3,000 of which are observable. So even if someone is claiming to be female, it's usually fairly apparent by observing and watching and listening to them that they are not.
You're not allowed to ask.
That's correct. You're not allowed to ask. It will be you or your daughter who will be excluded.
So this weekend, there would be, you've said, biological men playing women's sport.
That's correct.
Has there been appropriate discussion about all of this?
No, that's our big issue. Look, we have no problem with people wanting to identify however they wish. But in relation to the consultation, the people who put the policies into place do claim to have had a community consultation. But from what we can ascertain, they haven't consulted parents groups, safeguarding groups. They haven't discussed with any scientists. World Rugby did a wide-ranging review of their transgender inclusion policy, and they interviewed everyone. They let everyone have a seat at the table, including trans rights activists, women, scientists, litigation lawyers, human rights lawyers, and they came to the conclusion that it was too dangerous to allow males with a trans identity to compete with the women. So I think that if we did have a transparent conversation, that we wouldn't be having these policies because everyone would have a say.
Good on you. Good to talk to you. Have a good weekend and keep us posted. It's good to talk to you.